You weren't simply anybody. You were picked. They knew it. There is a reason they attempted to break you. There's a reason they targeted you. You were drained. Your truth was twisted into something incomprehensible. They saw something in you. Something forceful. Something unmistakable. They intended to quiet it. Steal it. Claim it as their own. But they failed. They behaved like they were selected. As if they have power. As if the whole universe revolved around their deceit. But genuine power. Real divinity. It was always yours. They constructed their whole life around the idea that they could dominate you. They may steal what was not theirs. Wear it like a stolen crown. But the truth carries weight. And it's crushing them now. The world recognizes them for who they are. Their falsehoods, masks, and meticulously planned manipulations. It is all disintegrating. And you are ascending. Not because they allowed you. Not because you resisted them. But because you were always supposed to. They attempted to persuade themselves that they were invincible, that they could change history. However, fate does not submit to deceit. They may attempt to play the part, mimic the selected energy, copy your essence. However, imitation is not equivalent to power. You are not just surviving. You are transcending. This is not just justice. This is the return of something higher and irrefutable. You are the chosen one, and they are only an echo of a falsehood. They arrived without shackles or force. They arrived cloaked as kindness, empathy, and adoration. At first, it seemed like fate. It's like meeting someone who actually sees you. However, every moment was a premeditated performance. They were masters of deceit, creating an image that mirrored whatever you desired. They carefully studied, mimicked, and modified until they became the ideal partner. The trustworthy confidant. It was never about connecting. It was all about dominance. Their benevolence was conditional. They provided encouragement. Expectations are concealed. Every shared laugh and whispered secret became a strand in an unseen net that tightened around you. You're here for a purpose. If you feel called, answer it. Click join to get access to rare information, in-depth insights, and a strong community. This is not just a membership. It is an awakening. Step into your divine mission. Join the chosen. The basis of your universe altered unexpectedly. Subtle, almost unnoticeable manipulations slipped in, with words distorted. Memories were rewritten. One day, you received accolades. Then you were reduced. Your strengths were reframed as weaknesses. Your concerns were rejected as overreactions. They raised questions, reshaped your views to the point that you were questioning everything, especially you. Your life altered instantly. However, the only one who seemed unstable was you. Rules were loose, and boundaries dissipated. And before you even noticed, each choice needed their approval. Every idea, second-guessed their response. They persuaded you that without them, you were lost. Lost in an infinite emptiness. That was the biggest deception. The walls closed in before you could identify the structure. One by one, familiar faces faded into shadows as their words poisoned your trust. They presented comrades as adversaries, motives as betrayals. You were left adrift in false loneliness, where only their voices mattered. With each stride, your freedom faded into reliance. Your light transforms into their reflection. They fed off your essence, taking credit for your talents, standing higher on the remnants of your broken soul. However, insatiable thirst cannot be satisfied, regardless of how much you donated. It never been enough. Every moment of optimism was only a respite before another descent into despair. A cycle deliberately structured to keep you from realizing what game they were playing. What they didn't expect was the ember they couldn't extinguish. They imagined they had taken your power, rewritten your soul. However, control based on illusion is inherently weak. A single inconsistency, a moment of clarity. There is a fissure in the neatly built deception. One sight could never be erased. The murmurs of skepticism were stronger. The delusions lost their hold. And suddenly, the weight you'd been carrying was no longer yours to bear. The world they built collapsed beneath the weight of reality. They had no power of their own, only what was taken from you. And now you're taking it back. They took things too far. Confidence devolved into recklessness when dominance was mistaken for invincible. And in their hubris, they forgot the one rule they always followed. keeping a low profile, a misplaced word, a paradox left uncontrolled, a look that lasted too long at the wrong time. That was enough. At first, the world dismissed it as coincidence. However, skepticism tends to spread. One discrepancy led to another, and quiet was quickly replaced by rumors, whispers and discussions. Conversations lead to assurance. The illusion, which had been so skillfully maintained, finally crumbled under its own weight. The instant they believed they were untouchable, the earth underneath them gave way. Their own deeds triggered the demise. Nor sabotage, nor treachery. Simply the inevitable result of deception, collapsing from its own impossibility. People no longer required convincing. They witnessed it for themselves. Their once loyal circle hesitated. That hesitancy developed into discomfort, unease with rejection. The power they held to was slipping through their fingers, and there was nothing else to grab onto. They attempted to manipulate the narrative and change reality, as they had always done. However, there was no audience left to believe it. When the mask was destroyed, it showed not a genius, nor a force of strength, but a fraud caught in their own web. For everything is hidden is intended to be exposed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought to light. Mark. They believed they could keep it buried, locked away in the darkness, hidden under layers of deception. But light does not need permission to shine. It bursts through. It exposes and discloses. Exactly when the sun rises. No matter how dark the night, truth has a tendency to burn through falsehood. And here it is, standing in the open for everyone to see. Initially, there was opposition. People clung to denial like a life raft in a sinking ship, refusing to accept what was happening before them. It was easy to turn away, to pretend that the fissures were not expanding, to overlook the contradiction between language and reality. However, the feeling of ease is very momentary. When the weight of truth pounds in, truth is unwavering. It does not seek for permission. It does not wait for the appropriate time. It reverberates like thunder in the silence, like an earthquake underneath seemingly solid foundations. The knowledge came like a deluge bursting through a dam. Sudden, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. Stomachs turned, faces paled, hands that previously praised, hands clenched. The questions came quickly and hard. How did we miss it? How long was this? Directly in front of us. Will we? Part of the lie. The worst idea of all. They struggled but were unable to push away. Did we create this illusion? The embarrassment was stifling. Those who had battled the hardest in their defense found themselves drowning in remorse, the heat rising to their cheeks as they remembered every time they had ignored a warning. Every uncertainty has been hushed. Every red signal had been explained away. Disgust grew where faith once existed. Betrayal was like fire in their chests. You're not here by chance. If you sense a tug, a knowledge deep inside. But you were picked. This is your moment. Click the super thank you button and contribute $1 or more to get deeper insights, unique information, and a path that fits with your divine destiny. This is not only a gift. It's a proclamation, a step toward being the person you were intended to be. Take the call. Walk with us and totally embrace your destiny. Your adventure starts now. And with that, the exodus started. One by one, they turned away, not out of morality or newfound righteousness, but for survival. To stand by them now meant being engulfed by the same fate, to be tainted with the same dishonor. Their most devoted followers, their finest defenders, those who had formerly vowed devotion began deleting history and distanced themselves from the catastrophe. It was like seeing a house of cards crumble, with one piece falling quicker than the next. They had spent years painstakingly crafting an identity, believing that they had created something unquestionable. However, deceit is similar to a badly constructed temple. It may stand tall for a time, but once the foundation is challenged, it falls to dust. And now they stood, the big builders of their own destruction, stripped of their illusions and left with nothing but the stark reality glaring them down. They had counted on smoke and mirrors, strategically placed statements and silences, and the belief that no one would ever examine too carefully. But when they did, there was nothing left. No power, no legacy, and no control. Simply an exposed fake. standing amid the remains of their empire. I watched as the world walked away. That distinguishes actual power from acquired influence. One can stand the test of time. The other vanishes the moment light shines on it. They had perfected the art of distortion, twisting reality to match their version of events. Every falsehood is meticulously placed, and every deception is masterfully performed. It had always worked previously, with the correct tone, emotions, and portrayal of imagined innocence. They could persuade the world to believe anything they pleased. But not this time. The same tactics that previously protected them now expose them. The enchantment has gone. The sob tales have lost their punch. The faked regret simply emphasized the hollow of their comments. The more they begged, the more evident it was. This was only another performance, another desperate effort to change the conclusion. The fiction of victimization had crumbled, as had their once invincible grip on the hearts and minds of others. Every falsehood has a cost. The bill had finally come. They had spent years extracting trust, squandering goodwill, and profiting from the agony they caused without ever considering the balance that needed to be paid. However, energy does not dissipate. It returns. Reshapes reflect back the harm done. Every seed of manipulation they planted had grown into a thorn garden, trapping them. They had internalized the dread they had previously weaponized. The paranoia they fostered in others now followed them like a shadow. They could sense it. The shift, the weight, the unavoidable outcome. Moving closer. No more secret getaways. No more sliding between cracks. Every falsehood was said. Every treachery was performed. Every heart is shattered. Their history was no longer behind them. It was right here, enveloping them. Inescapable. The authority they took for granted has crumbled in their hands. They no longer orchestrated pandemonium. They were the intended target. The hurricane they caused had gone full circle, and there was no place to hide. They persuaded themselves that they were untouchable, that their decisions would evaporate into the vacuum, leaving no trace and no consequence. They abandoned you while you battled amid the ruins. They rejoiced, feeling they had avoided any reckoning. They made a mistake in their calculations. Every lie, every harm delivered, every stolen moment of bliss, none of it vanished. Yet everything remained, circling back and gathering velocity. What they previously disregarded as happenstance now seems like an unstoppable flood rushing against them. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes it happens in quiet. In the slow deterioration of everything they built on lies, they flourished by draining others, stealing strength, siphoning trust, and feeding on adoration. They never earned. But borrowed items must finally be returned. And what was never genuinely theirs is slipping through their fingers. The same emptiness they put on you is now their own mirror. They are losing the individuals they used to readily control. Their once unquestioned authority is disintegrating because they are no longer ready to participate in the deception. As eyes open and loyalty shifts, every inconsistency, every whispered discussion conducted without them, and every door shutting before they can force it open unravels the tales they told. They were never frightened to be exposed. What really scares them is being irrelevant, invisible, powerless. Their webs will not be worn, nor will they cover themselves with what they create. Their actions are nasty, and they are capable of carrying out violent atrocities. Isaiah 6. They wove their falsehoods as precisely as a spider spins a web, believing that they had created something powerful enough to capture anybody in their clutches. But here's the thing with the web. It just takes one shift, one fracture, or one burst of truth to rip it apart. When it happens, the spider is left to dangle, exposed, powerless. They are now famished, desperately looking for someone, anybody, to feed off of, to once again believe in their delusion. The energy they stole. They wanted accolades. They felt the control was permanent. It is slipping through their fingertips. They travel among the wreckage they created, hoping for an open entrance. But every single one is closed. Every possibility they had previously taken for granted has evaporated. Every trick they used to pull off so easily no longer works. They believed quiet was their weapon. Shutting you out would shatter you. But now the solitude is theirs. No applause, no approval, and no audience to influence. They talk, but nobody listens. They weep, but no one responds. They reach, but there is nothing left to cling on to. And this is something they never expected. They were constantly convinced that you needed them, that you would disintegrate without their presence, and that you would always be waiting, desiring, and asking for another opportunity. But they were mistaken. You were never the one who needed them. They were always the ones who needed you. You were the source of light, the basis. Without your energy, compassion, and presence to deplete, they've got nothing. They notice you now, standing higher than before, walking away without looking back. They strive to remind you of the past and rewrite the conclusion. But there is no room for them in the new chapter. They wanted to be the writers of your narrative. But now that you've reclaimed the pen, they're only a footnote in a book. They no longer have the ability to modify. If they can't keep you under control, their desperation becomes bitter. They will resent you if they are unable to entice you back in. They will attempt to ruin what they cannot have. But here is where they fail again. Their rage has no meaning anymore. Their thoughts, accusations, and slander, everything descends into the emptiness. Ignored. The powerless were forgotten. Because you have changed since they first discovered you. You are no longer the person they can gaslight and manipulate into obedience. You are now invincible, impenetrable, and free. They are well aware of this. They sense it. They once thought they could own you. But the fact is that they were borrowing time, feasting on stolen power, and basing their existence on something that was never really theirs. And now you're standing in the ruins. They realize something they never anticipated. You've ascended. Without you, they are nothing. Their demise was imminent. However, they were too preoccupied with control to see it coming. Every step they made to destroy you was another stone in the foundation of their own demise. They felt they have influence over the truth. That reality might be distorted at their discretion. But deceit is frail, and fractures appear. Collapse is only a question of time. It's occurring gradually, layer by layer. The same manner they attempted to demolish you. But the distinction is evident. You persevered. You rebuilt. And they're unraveling. There are no more battles to fight. The damage is already under progress. Panic grabs them as their grasp deteriorates. They spent so long shaping reality, creating myths, and bending perception to their advantage. But the weight of truth shows no compassion, and it is crushing them with its might. Desperation motivates their next action. However, their tactics are not new. First, there are the skillfully written apologies, which are intended to influence rather than heal. They talk in riddles, weaving half-truths and hollow regret, hoping you'll doubt your own lucidity. But their voice is no longer powerful. Their presence no longer elicits compliance. When it fails, the next strategy arises. The fake warmth, the unexpected tenderness, and the flow of reminiscence. They resuscitate old memories and create a past that never was, reaching for anything that may draw you back into their web. However, their timing is too clear. Their motivations are too clear. What formerly worked now simply serves as evidence of their dishonesty. They dug a trench on my route, but they fell in themselves. Some verses 6. They believed they could twist the tale one final time. Turn the responsibility back on yourself. Write history in their favor. However, the fissures are too deep. The illusion is too destroyed. Look at what you've accomplished after everything. This is how you will repay me. The remarks that previously had weight now fall hollow. They made you question everything. But not anymore. Their power was not genuine. It only worked if you believed in it. And now you don't. Desperation gives way to rage. If they cannot control you, they will attempt to destroy you. Guilt, shame, and manipulation. None of it lands. They shout into the nothingness. However, no one is listening. And that's when they understand there's nothing else to cling on to. You will never come back with nothing left to control. They strike out, attempting to demolish what they no longer own. Their murmurs pollute the air, disseminating warped interpretations of history to anybody willing to listen. They portray themselves as hurt, deceived, and misunderstood. However, this time, the world is not so eager to believe. Their former audience is rejecting their influence and fading into irrelevance. What they dreaded the most was never being exposed. It meant being helpless. And that dread is now a reality. The illusion is crumbling. the flaws too profound to ignore. Their formerly faultless act is disintegrating, thread after thread, revealing the empty shell underneath. A handful still hold onto the performance. Those too blind to see, too feeble to challenge. It's too much like them to let go. But the rest, the others are observing, witnessing the slow-motion downfall of someone who based their life on lying. Their typical tricks have lost their effectiveness. The tales no longer align. The justifications seem scripted, and the weight of their own deception is crushing them. They felt they had complete control over perception and could manipulate reality eternally. But truth does not bend, wobble, or vanish. It remains unshakable. While they grab at illusions that no longer hold form, their rule is over. The control is no longer there. And you're free. They hadn't prepared for this time. Every action they took was designed to keep you trapped in their well-planned loop, preventing you from rising, escaping, or breaking free. They counted on your quiet, obedience, and uncertainty. But you're not terrified anymore. They wanted you to be lost in confusion, drowning in guilt, immobilized by self-doubt, so that they could continue to feed off your light. They based their confidence on your reluctance, their power on your pain, and their influence on your quiet. However, without you, they would be unable to survive. They are well aware of this. They sense it. You're never weak. They only seem strong because they used you to fuel themselves. Their terror is apparent. They grasp for you, clutching at the last traces of their power. Soft words loaded with falsehood, pretended contrition, and wrapped in manipulation. They claim to have changed, matured, and understood. However, the eyes always reveal the truth. There are no regrets, only dread, fear of losing the grasp they'd had for so long. And when it fails, the game changes. The past is rewritten. Memories are twisted. Guilt becomes their weapon. After everything, you would turn your back on me. They distort the story in an attempt to get you to question, hesitate, and return to their game. But you don't. The bait stays undisturbed. The doors they formerly stepped through are now locked. Their frustration grows. Their despair turns into rage. They strike out, rewrite history, and portray themselves as the victim. They whisper to anybody willing to listen. They spread their version of events, portraying themselves as the one who was victimized. But the viewership is decreasing. The globe they once dominated is slipping through their fingertips. The more they quarrel, the clearer the reality becomes. You do not argue. You do not defend. You do not explain. Your silence is suffocating them. They wanted to be at the center of your universe, the voice in your head, the weight on your spirit. However, they are now just a fading shadow. They didn't anticipate this. They never intended for you to live, much alone prosper. They didn't expect you to discover your voice, power, and serenity. Nonetheless, you stand tall, unshaken, and unconcerned. Not because you wanted vengeance or because you fought them, but because you chose something bigger. Heal and grow. Freedom. They stare helplessly as you go without them. And it is the one thing they cannot bear. You can't stop being who you are now. Every effort to undermine you. They make every attempt to keep you in their universe. Yet everything failed. This isn't about retribution or loud claims. This is something far greater. This is quiet. They never anticipated to be free. They are unable to touch the wind. They cannot rewrite. They spent years attempting to shrink you, but you've grown beyond their grasp. They wanted you devastated, but you've become something indestructible. They persuaded themselves that they had control over you and that you would constantly be in their shadow. However, shadows dissipate in the presence of light. And you're glowing. They depended on your emotions and involvement, an unending succession of explanations and excuses, but you've given them nothing. No arguments, no words, and no approval. Just an absence, and it is driving them insane. They previously nourished on your anguish, flourished on your attention, and constructed their illusion on the assumption that you would never actually go. But you did. You have drifted so far beyond their reach that they are left chasing ghosts, trying for remnants of control where none exist. The questions torment them. Do you think about them? Are you still feeling anything? Are they still around in your world? The solution is the one thing they can't manage. They do not. The version of you they controlled has vanished. They were destroyed by a force they had not anticipated. They believed they could bury you in uncertainty, abandon you in instability, and compel you into reliance. But from the ruins, you've created something magnificent. You're untouchable, not because you fought back, not because you wanted vengeance, but because you were healing. You thrived in ways they never predicted, ways they don't understand. They gaze from a distance, looking for a way back inside. However, the doors have closed. Their whispers have no weight. Their games have no impact. What's their name? No longer has significance. They lost the one thing they believed was permanent. They have a grasp on you. The world now perceives them as having lost control of their fake image. The illusion no longer works. The crowd no longer believes. Their power was not genuine. It only existed as long as you let it. And now? They are now nothing. You are not just surviving. You're prospering. Not because of, but in spite of them. This is the end. They were unprepared for the justice that they never saw coming. Not a conflict. Not a conflict. It's just their irrelevance. And you will ascend.